And of course, austerity seems to be the order of the day. People are worried about their families, their jobs, and their future prospects in themselves. One would often question, where did it all go wrong? In November last year, as the EU bounced Ireland into an IMF deal, I, like many of my colleagues in Fianna Fáil, felt the weight of history bear very heavy on our shoulders. Those few days in November 2010 were dark days. Some of the questions I found myself asking were, how did we let this happen? What were the senior members of our own party doing over the last 10 years, and why had they, in some sense, taken their eyes off the ball, given the banks and the markets free rein? I remember not sleeping for 3 days, actually, and 3 nights, and I became very aware of the generations that had gone before us, people who had worked so hard for, I suppose at the time, very little financial reward in most cases, except the reward of seeing their families progress. I was mindful of my late father, obviously, my grandfathers on both sides, and of course, people like Liam Mellows, who paid the ultimate sacrifice for the struggle to free our state and to stand amongst the great independent countries of the world. And here we were at this time ceding our own sovereignty. I watched closely as a true patriot of modern times, my friend and colleague, the late Brian Lenihan, battled on so many fronts as he fought the battle for control of our finances, the Irish economy, and indeed the biggest battle of all, the battle for his life. And to be fair to Brian, he was given an impossible task. I remember talking to him shortly after he took over as Minister for Finance, and at that stage he knew the banking system was already bust. One would question, where was the forward planning on finance over the period 2001 to 2007? Did the party and being in government become more important than the country and its people? I suppose the disappointing aspect for me and many like me was that we'd done so well in so many different areas. I don't buy the theory that we all lost touch with the people. We certainly didn't. And a lot of the people that I worked and had the pleasure working within the organisation of Fianna Fáil and the party certainly worked very hard for the people on the ground. We were and continue to be and have a role to play in being the most socially progressive political party in the state. When we had money, we gave it away. Record levels of spending across all sectors of society, huge increases in social welfare and wages, all dependent on pursuing, unfortunately, what now were the wrong policies. The policy of a low-tax economy that was over-dependent on the construction sector, and as a result, we were not prepared for the storm or the shock that the global economic collapse would cause. We are still in the middle of this economic storm, and let's make no mistake about it, while we have our own domestic problems in Ireland, the world is facing its worst ever economic crisis. The euro is on the brink, and it's time the EU finally took control of the situation, and fast, because time for prevarication is over. The past year was the most difficult in Fianna Fáil's history. As a party, we came out of a general election battered and bruised in a shadow of the great national movement we once were. The challenge facing us of rebuilding and re-energising our party is immense, and the first task in that process of rebuilding must be to return to the roots of our party, to understand why we were founded, to recognise what we stood for, and to reclaim the legacy and ideals of patriots like Liam Mellows and of his contemporaries who went on to found Fianna Fáil after his death. We will not be able to rebuild for the future until the day comes when we understand once again the foundations on which the party was originally built. In a last letter to his mother, Liam Mellows displayed a humbleness and a humanity towards his fellow man and an unquenchable commitment to his country's best interests. This humbleness and decency and this commitment to the betterment of Ireland was a trait common to men like Liam Mellows, who was regarded as one of the foremost social thinkers of the Irish revolutionary generation. He had a genuine belief that Irish independence was not an end in itself, but a means to achieve the end of building a country which could support all of its citizens. It was a similar belief that led to the foundation of Fianna Fáil, the belief that independence should be about more than just continuing the same social conditions and form of governance under a different flag. Fianna Fáil was founded under the belief that every action taken by government should be in the interests of the country as a whole and not just of one sector of the country. Sean Lemass summed this up shortly after the party's founding when he said, "We desire political and economic freedom so that we can take action to protect our vital national interests." Unfortunately, we stepped away from this founding belief. We started to put our full faith in the wisdom of the marketplace. We acted as if a strong economic market alone would automatically benefit every citizen in the state. We forgot that Ireland was not an economy but a society, and we must promote the belief that the success of our country should be measured not just in terms of GDP alone, but in terms of how we support every single member of our society, from the weakest to the strongest. We believe that commercial entities, particularly financial institutions, did not need any form of regulation, because they would always act with society's best interests at heart. We must never again believe that shareholder profits and the national interests were one and the same thing. The men and women who founded Fianna Fáil, like Sean Lamass, Eamon De Valera, Constant Markovich and Wexforf's Jim Ryan, were modest and humble people. They entered public life out of a genuine belief in bettering every sector of their country. And I honestly believe that people like Deputy Brown here this morning and our councillors and other elected representatives do so for the same principles and the same reasons. These people, they did not want material wealth for themselves. They did not believe that material wealth alone was the sign of a successful country. The government has an obligation to show moral leadership, and in the Tiger years the government should have fostered a national culture of restraint. Instead, every decision we took seemed to encourage and promote a conspicuous consumption throughout the country in the belief that the more money that was spent, the more the market would benefit everybody. We should have shouted stop, but instead we shouted spend. And a public who are willing to hear that message. Todd Andrews, one of the founders of Fianna Fáil, said of his generations of activists, "We were the children of unimportant people, the men of no property, of whom Wolfe Tone spoke, who had no ambition beyond rearing their families to be educated and decent citizens." The modesty of Andrews and others like him was sadly lacking from national life during the Celtic Tiger era. Our party and our country have been through some difficult days over the past year, and the events which led to this have not arisen suddenly. Their consequences for both the country and Fianna Fáil will also not disappear overnight. Fianna Fáil, until recent times, was one of the great national movements in Irish life. We were linked to the ordinary men and women in every parish and on every street. We spoke on their behalf, and through us they had a voice. We've now lost that link and relationship of trust that the Irish people had with us, and this has been torn apart. And it will take a new generation of Fianna Fáil years to rebuild that trust and to get to the stage where the Irish people are willing to express their confidence in us again. Until then, Fianna Fáil might only play a peripheral role in Irish public life, but an important one. We took some difficult decisions over the last 3 years of our time in government, and there is a tendency in certain quarters to blame these decisions for the position we find ourselves in now. It was not the results of the economic difficulty we find ourselves in now, but the route which we took to this economic difficulty which caused a break in our relationship with the Irish people. This break with the Irish people was fundamentally caused because we gave the impression we forgot why we sought office. We became, in the minds of our supporters, disconnected from our electorate because it looked as if we believed that we had a fundamental right to be in office, and we gave the impression we exercised power on many occasions for the sole purpose of retaining power and maintaining high office. We gave the impression that we forgot that the reason our forefathers established the party and sought elected office was to do good on behalf of all of those who put them in there. We must never again believe that we have an automatic right to power, and we must never forget that we are here to serve our communities and every sector of our country. If we do not place these aims as the reason we exist as a party, we have no right to seek office. The new leadership of Fianna Fáil will have to refocus our party on these beliefs and on the ways of our founding fathers. Until then, we will be directionless and meaningless as a political organisation. I'm a man of great hope always, and I honestly believe that this country will get itself out of the morass that it's currently in. I have great faith in Ireland as a country, but more importantly, I have great faith in the Irish people. And I know that we will overcome this. And the sacrifice and legacy of Liam Mellows demands nothing less. I'd like to conclude by quoting a few words from a prayer which was written in the memory of Liam Mellows and of his 3 brave colleagues who stood and fell beside him on that grey morning in Dublin 89 years ago. Gorey and Liam and Dick and Joe, star of the morning, Mary come. Red is their heart's blood and their souls like snow. Mary Immaculate, guide them home. Gorey,